I felt like this week there was just too much going on for me to catch it all in the daily show. So I'm committed to come and do at least one weekend show where I could wrap up and catch up on some of the themes that I didn't get to during the week. And there are two major things that developed throughout the week that I want to touch today. The first thing is we got to talk about COVID. I want to talk about this article. This comes, I'm pulling the article off of Dark to Light, and it is... the article, it's not from Dark to Light. It's SOTT.net, SOTT.net. It's the title of the article is Lockdown Lunacy, The Thinking Person's Guide. This is by J.B. Handley. It was published on May 30th. Now, what this article does is these guys did an exhaustive look at all of the studies that have come out by the Lancet, Johns Hopkins, all the different places. They followed them all through. They've kind of just followed everything. And these are the things that we have finally determined based with all the information we have. The research on this is so good. It puts it to bed. So if you have any questions, questioning any of the facts that they lay out here, just go look at their research. Go look at their links. Go look at the data that they put in here to back this up. This is the guide going forward. Fact number one, the infection fatality rate for COVID-19 is somewhere between 0.07 and 0.20%, in line with the seasonal flu. So, despite all the initial fears, we're in line with the seasonal flu. What this means is we're really prepared to handle this in our local communities. If we can handle a flu season, we can handle this. It's not going to overburden our systems with this low of an infection risk. This is what it says about it. Quote, there's some sort of mob mentality here operating that they just insist this has to be the end of the world, and it has to be that the sky is falling. It's attacking studies with data based on speculation and science fiction, but dismissing real data in favor of mathematical speculation is mind-boggling. So people are going with the models rather than what we know. Fact number two. I kind of wrote this funny. Fact number two, where did it go? Okay, fact number two, the risk of dying from COVID-19 is much higher than the average IFR for older people and those with comorbidities, and much lower than the average IFR for young, healthy people, and nearing zero for children. Now, we're talking about canceling school. We did cancel school, right? Next year, a lot of school districts, and I know we're here locally, they're talking about continuing the online learning, continuing keeping kids at home. It's obvious the impact this will have on our community. For one thing, the social distancing is not good for us, right? Staying away from your friends and family. My daughter hasn't really been to a friend's house for months, it seems like, right? Like everybody's on the edge here. Everybody's breaking down. You can't go out to eat. You can't go down to out to the store. Now, I know some of my listeners from around the country are starting to do that, but the listeners internationally, and I know there's a few of you, some of you guys are still on lockdowns. I've looked up where you're at. You're still experiencing some of exactly what I'm talking about. We're in the same place when we're talking about this COVID thing, and it's all a big scam. Okay, so kids, not a big deal. Obviously, the older you get, the bigger deal it is. Over 85 years old, you have a real issue. But that's also above the average age of death. So at that point, you're kind of afraid of everything, right? Even a bladder infection has a higher rate of death than COVID if you're over 85. Okay, fact number three. People infected with COVID-19 who are asymptomatic, which is most people, do not spread COVID-19. On January 13th, 2020, a 22-year-old female with a history of congenital heart disease went to the emergency room of Guangdong Provincial People's Hospital complaining of a variety of symptoms. Okay, they did contact tracing on her. 3 days into her hospital condition, her condition was improving. They ran tests. Okay, she wasn't bad. They went out. They did excessive contact tracing. Listen to this. So how many people did they have to screen because of her contacts? 455. They tracked down 455 of her contacts. Not a small number, the researchers explained. 455 contacts who were exposed to the asymptomatic COVID-19 virus carrier became the subjects of our research. They were divided into three groups: 35 patients, 196 family members, and 224 hospital staffs. We extracted their epidemiological information, clinical records, auxiliary examination results, and therapeutic schedules. As you can see, being hospitalized led to the majority of the contacts this woman had, both with other patients and with many members of the hospital staff. Notably, all of these contacts took place indoors, and one might argue many of the contacts, at least with hospital staff, would have involved relatively intimate contact. Amongst the patient, The average age was 62, arguably making them higher risk, and many of those patients were immunocompromised for a variety of reasons, including chemotherapy and cardiovascular disease. So, how many of the 455 people were infected with the asymptomatic 22-year-old woman? In summary, of all the 455 contacts were excluded from SARS-CoV-2 infection, which is COVID-19. Zero people that they contact traced. 455, broke it into groups, made it into a clinical type study, and found none. Fact number 3, COVID does not spread if you don't have symptoms. Fact number 4, emerging science shows no spread of COVID in the community, shopping, restaurants, barbers, or etc. You mean closing parks, closing stores, wearing gloves and masks at the grocery store, fumigating our groceries, and just being generally paranoid wasn't necessary? Yup. Fact number 5, published science shows COVID-19 is not spread outdoors. There's really no science to support all the outdoor bans that my home state of Oregon and so many other states have put in place. I'll leave you with my favorite part of the quote. The transmission of respiratory infections such as SARS, COVID-2, or COVID-19 from the infected to the susceptible is an indoor phenomenon. Okay? It only happens indoor. Putting us on lockdown makes it worse. Worse! Okay? Fact number 6, science shows masks are ineffective to halt the spread of COVID-19. The World Health Organization said they should only be worn by healthy people if treating or living with someone with COVID-19. In addition, they should only be medical masks. Cotton masks do not do anything. The filter material of face masks does not retain or filter out viruses or other submicron particles. When the understanding is combined with the poor fit of masks, it is readily appreciated that neither the filter performance nor the facial fit characteristics of the mask qualify them as being devices which protect against respiratory infections. To put this in simple terms, in order for a mask to be really effective that covered both your nose and mouth, you would asphyxiate. The minute the mask allows you to breathe, you can no longer filter microparticles that make you sick. Oh, folks, it just is the worst. This study is the first RCT of cloth masks, and the results caution against the use of cloth masks. This is an important finding to inform occupational health and safety. Moisture retentions, reuse of cloth masks, and poor filtration may result in increased risk of infection. Further research is needed to inform the widespread use of cloth masks globally. See, as they march us to the communist state, as they march us to this authoritarian dictatorship type rule, they're going to ask us to do things to ourselves that are counterproductive. Okay? They're going to ask us to do things like wear a mask when it actually hurts us. So they're making us go against ourselves, defy logic. Okay, as free men and free women, we're supposed to have the information that we make our own decisions, right? No, they're making this decision for us. And it works against us. No, you have to stay on lockdown. No, you give us the information, let's decide. We won't stay on lockdown, but we are because they're telling us. This is how it works. This is how every dictatorship, every authoritarian regime starts out. America can turn this back, but it has to start with us, and we're going to continue to get to how we can make these changes. Okay, so fact number 8. Did we skip 7? Fact number 7. There's no science to support the magic 6-foot barrier. This research comes with a caveat. While research indicates that viral particles can be spread via bioaerosols, the author stated that finding infectious virus has proven elusive, and experiments are ongoing to determine viral activity in collected samples. They have been unable to collect the virus from the air. They've been unable to even form an experiment to make it work. Okay, so they're just like, there's just no evidence that we're spreading it, that the social distancing measures have any effect. Fact number 8, the idea of locking down an entire society has never been done and has no supportable science and only theoretical modeling. The negative consequences of large-scale quarantine are so extreme. Forced confinement of sick people with the well, complete restriction of movement of large populations, difficulty in getting critical supplies, medicines, and food to people inside the quarantine zone. This mitigation measure should be eliminated from serious conditions, some serious consideration. Okay, it goes through, it's got charts and all kinds of fun stuff here. Fact number 9, the epidemic models of COVID-19 have been disastrously wrong. And both the people and the practice of modeling has a terrible history. Folks, it never is right. Everything from mad cow, bird flu, swine flu, On and on and on they go. All the projections are always wrong. They never come out right. Whether they do anything to prevent the spread or don't do anything to prevent the spread, they're off by miles. Dr. Fauci, I woke up this morning to a news thing saying Dr. Fauci is now warning us that because of the protests, we might have another round of the virus. OMG, Dr. Fauci, where were you when the protests started telling people to stop doing it for the sake of their health? But no, you remain silent. You remain silent, allowing these things to continue. So much of our country thinks that King Fauci knows what he's talking about, but yet he waited 9 days to say something. And frankly, he's wrong when he says it. Okay? Go on and on. Okay. Fact number 10, the data shows that lockdowns have not had an impact on the course of the disease. Okay, the accurate modeling we've had, the modeling we've compared with Italy, other countries, places where they have and haven't done it, have shown that the lockdowns have had no effect. Okay, fact number 11, Florida locked down late, opened early, and is doing fine despite predictions of doom. Guys, in America, we have 50 different countries. We have 50 different petri dishes where we can figure things out. And I'm pretty sure you could make a great case study of Florida and New York. You've got similar demographics. You've got similar population sizes. You've got a whole lot of similarities, but you have completely different political governors. You've got one governor who literally sentenced people to death by sending COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, the highest at-risk populations. And then you've got a governor down in Florida who created safety zones around nursing centers and basically put the nursing centers, which are the highest risk, on lockdown and allowed most of the rest of the state to continue operating. Big difference. Fact number 12, New York's above average death rate appears to be driven by fatal policy error combined with aggressive intubations. So not only do we have the policies of sending patients with COVID into nursing homes, we were also intubating patients way too early. In fact, one doctor is blowing the whistle on this, saying it's criminal how quickly they were putting people onto intubators. Because as you know, once you're on an intubator, your likelihood of surviving drops significantly. It's also led to the intubation craze where we had to mobilize the entire U.S. economy to build intubators, and now we're selling them to the rest of the world. Next, ventilators, Fact 13, public health officials and disease epidemiologists do not consider the other negative societal consequences of lockdowns. Guys, these ivory tower medical professionals that have no idea how the supply chain works, no idea how we get the materials to make things, no idea about anything. They couldn't even tell you how the paper is made that on the books they print. Okay, these people have no idea. Are they viable in society? Absolutely. Should they be doing medical research? Absolutely. Do we need them? Sure. Do we need them making macro decisions about our economy and our daily lives? Abso-freaking-lutely not. To become a medical expert, you can't simultaneously be an economic expert. Okay, these people, we elect people that are so specialized that they lose the force because they're looking at a tree. Okay. All right. Fact number 15, the lockdowns will cause more death and destruction than COVID-19 ever did. The policies have created the greatest global economic disruption in history with trillions of dollars of lost economic output. These financial losses have been falsely portrayed as purely economic. To the contrary, using numerous National Institutes of Public Health Access publications, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC and Bureau of Labor, statistics data, and various actuarial tables, we calculate that these policies will cause devastating non-economic consequences that will total millions of accumulated years of life lost in the United States, far beyond what the virus itself has caused. This is serious, folks. This is serious. Fact 16, all these phased reopenings are utter nonsense with no science to support them, but they will all be declared a success. Mr. Inslee's COVID-19 dashboard, which is supposed to provide a science-based path for Washington's recovery, is much the same story. The online dashboard includes dials for 5 public safety variables, but gives no indication of how each is calculated or where the dials need to be to begin with, the various phases of reopening. When will builders be allowed to start new construction? When will small stores be able to open like Home Depot is open? The dashboard is designed to imply science but lacks meaningful data. Yep. You're still waiting for your phase 1 or 2 reopening? Trust me, whoever conjured up your state's plan is quite literally making things up as they go along. And given the extreme range of plans taking place, Even in neighboring counties, the odds are they don't have anything to do with the arc of the virus, which is exactly 0. But you already knew that if you read this far. The good news is they will all succeed because they were all never needed to lock down. They all never needed a lockdown in the first place. Mission accomplished. Great, folks. That's where we're at. We have reached an absolute lockdown fever pitch when it comes to the insanity going on. I want to play Tucker Carlson. He's just slinging truth arrows left and right these days. I want to play a little clip from him. Oh, my computer's being a little slow here. Don't want to record here. Okay, here we go. We got it playing here. All right, listen to Tucker Carlson.
Not anymore. And in fact, in many parts of the country, people still don't have those rights. But our leaders said they had no choice but to take them away. This was a medical emergency. It was more important than your rights. They were lying. We always thought they were lying. Now we know for sure. Because today we have an open letter signed by more than 1,200 doctors, professionals, and public health officials. And it explains that the riots you're watching must be allowed, while any other demonstration, like one you might participate in, must be suppressed. Quote, as public health advocates, we do not condemn these gatherings as risky for COVID-19 transmission. But they clarify this should not be confused with a permissive stance on all gatherings, particularly protests against stay-at-home orders. Those actions not only oppose public health interventions, but they are also rooted in white nationalism and run contrary to respect for black lives. In other words, anybody who complains about being locked down is a racist, except the people who refuse to be locked down because they're protesting racism. Heads I win, tails you lose. These are public health officials. This is insanity. Just days ago, you were told that any kind of gathering could kill thousands of people. You'd be a murderer. You'd be a genocidal murderer. That was before we learned that viruses have their own woke political agenda. And so the only rallies we should ban are those being held by people who have the wrong ideas, people who want to earn a living or go to church. Those protests are racism. Oh, and this is all coming from people who lecture you about science, who wouldn't recognize science if they got in the shower with them, but they're still lecturing about science, which is always a pretext for ways to destroy our country and control your life. And by the way, to fleece you. Why are we paying for any of this crap, by the way? That's a question we're going to address in some detail next week. But right now, it's enough to know this is a sham. It was a front for tyrants to inflict their personal neuroses and their desire for control on the United States of America and to do it outside the democratic process, outside democratic norms. Every person who signed this letter is a faker. None of them represent science. We should never listen to any of them again.
I love Tucker Carlson's, I mean, he's so forthright, but he's just getting it, man. He's just nailing it. Let's look at Phil Murphy, Governor Phil Murphy of the great state of New Jersey. Listen to this. He tweeted this out May 6th. We're guided by science, not politics. We're guided by data, not protests. We're guided by public health, not emotion. That's how we meet this moment. That's how we save lives. This is the same Governor Phil Murphy, by the way, who said when he was considering his executive order policies for the lockdown, didn't consider the Bill of Rights. That was above his pay grade. You're the governor. Ain't nothing above your pay grade. Then he said on the 4th of this month, yesterday we had another day of overwhelmingly peaceful protests. Interesting. So on the 4th, we've got peaceful protests by countless New Jerseyans no longer willing to sit by and accept systematic racism as just part of our national condition, taking to the streets peacefully to create a better future for our entire New Jersey family. Then, the next day, update, I've extended the public health emergency in New Jersey for an additional 30 days. We will continue our path forward while remaining vigilant and prepared to act should there be a new outbreak of COVID-19. What are we talking about? What in the world are we talking about here, right? I mean, this is insanity. So then I like what Ben Shapiro has to say here. You can say goodbye to your dying mother. You might kill others. You have to let your business die. You might kill others. You must remove your kids from school. You might kill others. You can absolutely do the Macarena with woke protesters. And this is in response to a video of a whole bunch of National Guardsmen and police officers doing the Macarena at one of these protests. It is disgusting. It is disgusting. Okay. No one can enforce social distancing at this point. I honestly cannot imagine one single police officer in this country. Now that war is being waged against our officers, I can't imagine one of them willingly or enforcing any of these executive orders for COVID. It is so beyond the pale. It is so beyond the pale. We must challenge them. We must challenge them. Listen to Greg Gutfeld's detail about his opinions on how we got to where we're at with everything we've got going on. Everything from the inconsistencies on who's a criminal, who's not, who's a protester, who's not. He nails it here.
To dramatically rethink the way that we keep people safe, as he puts it, in Minneapolis. What do you think?
He is a fan of Antifa, so his opinion means nothing. I tried to be nice in the A block, but that's out the window. If you want to defund the police, go for it. Any celebrity who endorses it, 911 should block their number, right? And any gun dealer, every gun dealer should never sell a gun to somebody who wants to defund the police. Because what they are doing when they're purchasing a weapon is they're getting security for themselves while denying it for you, all right? So I say go for it. Speaking of guns, how do you think gun control as an issue is going to fare after the Democratic National Convention hit the streets, right? That spectacle of lawlessness.
The Democrat National Convention he refers to is the riots, right? The Democrat National Convention was supposed to be in Minneapolis, and so that's what he's referring to as watching those riots take place in Minneapolis.
Effectively did more to end gun control than anything the NRA could ever dream of. You are watching people buy more guns than ever before, and I include myself in that. So now that gets to my last point that I wanted to say at the end of the A block. You know when Trump does something considered good, what is always the criticism? Well, he should have done it sooner. You know, he should have shut down travel sooner. You know, he should have shut down the city sooner. Well, when Juan said, you know, how great it was that we saw these peaceful protests, well, I would like to say, I wish it would have happened sooner. Because then my neighborhood wouldn't have been destroyed and decimated. And I wouldn't be looking at people trying to rebuild their lives. Maybe it could have been done sooner. I mean, how would you feel if your neighborhood was destroyed? You know what? Great example, Chris Palmer. You got to look up his tweets. He tweeted while rioters burned down low-income housing, he tweeted, burn it all down. And then when the rioters got to his gated community, he called the cops. See the shift? Everybody can talk about and wax romantic about the movement and how we need systemic change because it means nothing until they get to your door and then it all goes out the window.
He's got it. It's very true. It all is just there, nebulous. It's a cause until they're at your door, until they're here. I'm sitting here, right, they're not boarded up anymore, but they boarded up the doors across the street here because they were afraid of a riot. Today I went down to a Goodwill. I did this twice this week, actually. Went down to a Goodwill, didn't go in both times because of the restrictions on how to get in, okay? Today we went down there, and literally there's a protest down the road. There's a protest happening down the road. People standing close together, people not wearing masks, okay? And then just right here at Goodwill, I mean, we're talking like, you know, like if I was a good football player, I might be able to throw a football that far. Then over here, you got people standing in line 6 feet apart to get into the Goodwill, and you have to wear a mask to get in. Same thing with the Costco, just right up over there, right? You got to wear a mask to get in. Why are we wearing masks? They're not good for us, right? I just explained that at the beginning of the show. Why are we standing 6 feet apart? I'll tell you why. It's because they want to track our cell phones individually, and they can't track them when we're standing too close together. They can't single us out. That's why they want to do it. It has nothing to do with health and safety. It has to do with tracking us. So I say to the guy, the Goodwill worker, standing at the door, I've got one mask. I give the mask to my daughter, but I won't have a mask. Or I say, hey, I want to come in. And I have a medical condition and I can't wear a mask. And you can't ask me about it because of HIPAA laws. Well, I'm not letting you in, sir. Well, are you going to stop me or are you going to call somebody to stop me? As in, are you going to have to call the police? So we went into it back and forth a little bit. I'm just talking out of my car, talking to him. He's watching people come in the door, right? And he's like, well, he starts kind of freaking out. Well, I need a job. I'm not going to let you in. And if you do come in, I'll call the cops. I'm thinking, this man's lost his mind. And so has every other employee here at this Goodwill. Who's telling them that we have to wear masks? Who's enforcing this? Who's enforcing it on the business? Who's going to show up and do the dirty work at this point? You want to wage a war on the cops? Then let's wage a war on the cops. Then let's socially disappoint all these BS rules. You ain't going to arrest the looters? Then you ain't going to stop me from wearing a mask. Oh, am I a weaker victim? Am I not as big a bully as the looters? And so you're not afraid of me? That ain't going to last. They wanted these protests to be over the lockdowns, but George Floyd got killed. And then it ended up being the wrong people in the streets for our government. But the reality is they're still pushing us. They're still pushing us. They're still pushing us. And I got a message. I got a message for all the people that are both the cops, that are both the government workers, and are going to be the useful idiots in our society that help them get away with this hijacking of our sovereignty. Listen to what
leftists.
Representative Stephen Smith from Georgia says about what happens going down the road we're going, all the useful idiots that are out there.
In the United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. It's the same pattern everywhere. The moment they serve their purpose, all the useful idiots are either be executed entirely, all the idealistically minded Marxists, or exiled or put in prisons, like in Cuba. Many former Marxists are in in prison. So most of the Indians who were cooperating with the Soviets, especially with our Department of Information of the USSR Embassy, were listed for execution.
That's what's coming. I mean, it seems crazy. I've had multiple people being like, oh, this is nuts, this is nuts. Look around, folks. We are at the starting of this, okay? You can go, you know what's really good? Go on to Netflix. I think it's called Hitler's Inside Men or something like that. Watch it. It walks you through the evolution. From day one, those guys were murderous. From day one. But they got caught early on being a little too murderous. They exposed themselves a little too early and it caused some issues. And so they backed off. They had to slowly walk the Germans, the Austrians, the Polish into letting them take their Jewish neighbors, into scapegoating their Jewish neighbors. Right now, you know what's happening? They're trying to scapegoat white people. They're trying to blame it on white people. This isn't about race, guys. I'm not defending imperialism. I'm not defending the horrors of the past and the atrocities of the past. Ain't no one about that. Okay? We fought a war to fix it. We've gone through a lot as a nation. We're the freest country on earth. So come on, man. I mean, everything's on a little bit of a sliding scale. Please, okay? You don't need to fix Seattle when you got Kenya, all right? Like, obviously we make little changes, but the idea that somehow we're as bad as these other places is just insane. And the people who are pushing this, who are complying with it, your days are numbered, okay? The soul of our nation is at risk here. This is not, as Richard Grinnell said to Dave Rubin in his interview this last week, this is not about right versus left. This is about the USA versus DC and everybody that DC is involved with. And he explains it so articulately. I highly recommend the Rubin Report podcast with Richard Grinnell. former ambassador to Germany and acting director of national intelligence who just declassified a bunch of information. He's got so much inside knowledge, and he was dishing. He also talks about labeling Antifa as a terrorist organization and what that will do. It's totally good. We'll cover it as those things happen. Okay? Let's not be useful idiots here, you guys. We've talked on this podcast previously about how we're at war, and I've played those different parts here. I want to transition a little bit from the fact that we need to start really looking at some civil disobedience. We really, when stores require masks, we need to try to not wear masks. I mean, I'm serious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people not wearing a mask, and pretty soon it's completely unenforceable. We've got to start standing closer together in lines. I'm not kidding. Those little acts, it seems like such a little thing. Many people, it just doesn't bug me. You know, if I have to wear a mask to go in a store, it's not a big deal. Guys, it's not about the masks. It's about them getting us to do something for no reason. That's the point. See, in America, our government's not supposed to ask us to do things with no point. It's like the taxation with no representation kind of thing. Like we're supposed to get something for everything we do and give because we're free men. So the social contract is a part of that, and we're completely throwing it out the window here. We've got an old guard fighting the new guard. This doesn't get any clearer. Okay, everybody knows what happened in 2016. Hillary ran a bad campaign. Donald Trump ran over her. They tried to cheat at the election. They couldn't win. They tried to plant Russian information and funnel it into the FBI to create doubt and suspicion around Donald Trump as a Russian agent. And rather than Donald Trump commit obstruction of justice and kill the investigation, he let it play out. He knew he was innocent, so he gave him as much rope as they wanted, and they hung themselves. Bob Mueller hung himself. He hung the Democratic Party. Okay. Then they tried to go with the Ukraine gate. Now, Ukraine is its own ball of wax too. It's definitely tied to the Russia stuff. Same players and individuals involved. Remember what I say. Remember the names. They tried to impeach the president. Didn't work. Then they've got COVID, and then they've got the lockdowns, and then they've got the riots. Okay. Guys, it ain't going to stop either. Listen to this. It's just going to get more fun. You think that 2016 and 2017, 2018 in a ride, look what's coming up. Look what Hillary Clinton had to say this week on the Rachel Maddow show. Now, some of this she's trolling. She's doing the same thing that Donald Trump did, but she's also telling us exactly what we have to look forward to. Exactly what we have to look forward to. She's projecting out what it is that they're going to be doing and how they're going to be working the rest of the year running up to this election.
Trump White House and say, well, you know. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there. We're going to do what they and say, well, you know, the Russians probably did help them, you know, to whatever extent we may not yet know. So
totally
we're not going to go there. We're going to do what they tell us. Imagine, Rachel, that you had one of the Democratic nominees for 2020 on your show. Mm-hmm. And that
isn't that funny? One of the Democratic nominees for 2020 on your show, and Hillary Clinton sitting there, and the rumors are she's going to try to insert herself at least as the VP, if not the white horse for the candidacy altogether.
Person said, you know, the only other adversary of ours who's anywhere near as good as the Russians is China. So why should Russia have all the fun? And since Russia is clearly backing Republicans, why don't we ask China to back us?
I hereby tonight ask China.
That's right. And not only that, China, if you're listening, why don't you get Trump's tax returns? I'm sure our media would richly reward you.
Trump said the same thing to Russia about Hillary, right, and her emails. They're going after these tax returns because they're losing in court to try to get them. Now, Robert Mueller reviewed Donald Trump's tax returns. There's always the outside possibility that something's on Donald's tax returns that Robert saw but couldn't bring forward as a crime, but it's kind of damaging, right? Who knows what it is? Or there's absolutely nothing, but they just need something to go after. Either way, he didn't release his tax returns. We elected him regardless. I believe he's holding on to his tax returns to release them suddenly before this next election when the pressure's on, just like he released the Ukrainian transcript, just like he gave Robert Mueller all the documents that they never thought he'd get. Now remember, Robert Mueller is a part of the executive branch. It's different than giving Congress your documents. This is like giving someone in your branch your documents that you could ultimately fire if they were leaking them uncontrollably or whatever the case was. Whereas giving him to Congress, you're going to fight that. That's the executive privilege idea. So don't buy into the argument that Donald Trump didn't turn over any documents. He gave everything to Robert Mueller. He had full power to examine every aspect of Donald Trump's life going back who knows how far.
Now, according to the Mueller report, that is not conspiracy because it's done right out in the open. So if after this hypothetical Democratic candidate says this on your show, within hours, all of a sudden the IRS offices are bombarded with incredibly sophisticated cyber tools looking for Trump's tax returns and then extracts them and then passes them to whatever the new WikiLeaks happens to be, and they start being unraveled and disclosed, nothing wrong with that.
Okay, I'm calling it right here. They have Donald Trump's tax returns. I think they've been leaked. I think that somewhere along the line they've got his tax returns. Someone in the IRS gave them up. So they got them through discovery, and they're being held under seal in court, but they have copies of them, or they think they're going to get them, or they're going to falsify them. Something's going to happen here where they're going to produce Donald Trump's tax returns. Just like when the WikiLeaks emails came out, right? And they tried to plant a story. She's projecting out here that they're going to do this. So she's creating this plausibility that China's now going to interfere in our election on her behalf, but you can't blame her because Trump called for the Russians to interfere, and we think the Russians interfere in our election. So that's what she's doing here. She's laying the groundwork for election interference by the Chinese, and she's going to be indemnified from it. Additionally, she's saying they're going to take those tax returns and they're going to leak them through WikiLeaks. You know who it's going to be? It's going to be anonymous. It's going to be the anonymous character that's kind of the left side of QAnon. If you're in Q and don't look at anonymous, you're missing out, because I mean these two things are like tit for tat, back and forth, right? So they're probably going to end up releasing them through anonymous or some affiliate of anonymous, and it's going to cause some kind of sting at the election. My belief is they'll release them and then Trump will release the real ones. There'll probably be some kind of discrepancy. Who knows? We'll see. Now, I always say, remember the names, remember the names. Something else happened in the news this week that was kind of a big deal, and it's just been running constantly. It's that there's been a turning of ex-generals on Donald Trump, starting first and foremost with Mad Dog Mattis, Jim Mattis, okay? Jim Mattis was a Marine general. He's well known in the military. He was kind of a hero type character. Jim Mattis is what we call a neoliberal. Okay, he's a Democrat. He espouses democratic ideals and policies. He's not super involved in domestic policy, but internationally, he's very lockstep in line with the Bushes, the Clintons, and Obama. And so he's not a neocon, but he's a neoliberal. So he kind of has that globalist thing, but he wants to run through allies and the UN and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a neocon is a little bit more American centric. So that's who James Mattis is. Now, during the Barack Obama administration, ISIS was allowed to grow. Now, we have information from Judicial Watch this week, which we will hopefully expand upon later into the week. We have an actual recorded phone call where Hillary Clinton acknowledges that the attack on Benghazi was not done because of a riot in response to a YouTube video, but was in fact a planned attack by al-Qaeda. Now, anybody following the Benghazi case knows that's the case, but nonetheless, Hillary Clinton was covering that up. Involved in that cover-up is the rise of ISIS. ISIS was armed by U.S. suppliers of arms that were being run through Benghazi. Good chance that Chris Stevens was a double agent. If not, he was at least trying to blow the whistle on the Obama administration for doing that. What they were doing at the southern border with Fast and Furious, they were essentially also doing with ISIS. So they funded ISIS. ISIS ended up taking over a territory the size of Ohio. Simultaneously with this, you have another general over in Afghanistan named McMaster. Now, you might remember McMaster from the Netflix hit starring Brad Pitt. Don't remember the name. I think it's War Dog. Not War Dogs. I can't remember the name. Starring Brad Pitt. Now, the story with McMaster was he was a general over Afghanistan sent to go clean up that mess. He did a marginal job cleaning up the mess as best he could, as portrayed in the movie. But during the Icelandic volcano eruption that stopped air travel to and from Europe, he and an entourage of people kind of got stuck in Europe, kind of just hanging around, drinking, waiting for a flight back to Afghanistan. And they had an embedded Rolling Stone reporter with them. That Rolling Stone reporter put a hit piece out on McMaster because they had been talking negatively about Barack Obama, the commander-in-chief, and how he was pretty much incompetent when it came to military affairs, which is really the truth. and he was trying to micromanage things. So Barack Obama fired McMaster. That reporter from the Rolling Stones later down in Florida was in a wreck in his Mercedes where the brakes had been somehow electronically disconnected, and it sent him at a high speed, launching into some guardrail and, horrible fiery wreck. Remember the names. So that's McMaster. Touch on him again. So that's happened simultaneously to the rise of ISIS. McMaster gets fired, ISIS continues to rise, and you've got Mad Dog Mattis in the Middle East who may or may not be trying to fight this ISIS thing, but Mad Dog wants to stay in Afghanistan and Iraq essentially forever, right? They want to have a footprint forever. Same with McMaster and same with their predecessor who had since retired, Colin Powell. Here's all these names. All right, so Mattis comes out, makes a statement against Donald Trump purely on the basis of him clearing some protesters prior to walking over to the Lafayette Park, to the church across from the White House that had been burned down the night before. Complete bularchy. They didn't use tear gas. Come on, man. Federal property, they've got a right to move people out. The president needs to be protected. If he wants to walk over there and doesn't want to walk over in a crowd of protesters, he has the right to do that. Give me a break. It's so stupid. But he also protests the potential use of the Insurrection Acts and National Guardsmen and active duty military troops on U.S. soil for law enforcement purposes. This is also ridiculous because it's been done multiple times. The 1992 L.A. riots, we sent the National Guard in. Seattle World Trade Organization riots, sent the National Guard. I mean, it goes on and on. There's a whole bunch of these instances where the National Guard has been used. Now, on a scale like this across the country, really not since the Civil War. But we're kind of at that point, right, folks? I mean, let's be realistic here. Abraham Lincoln had to arrest people and suspend habeas corpus to keep the Union together. All right, if Donald Trump needs to smoke out some protesters so that he can go reclaim America's cathedral, then so be it, for goodness sakes. So James Mattis puts out this letter in opposition to that. Now, rumor is James Mattis is looking to run as a VP. He's looking to possibly even run as a replacement for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden taps out and Hillary doesn't come in, he's got political aspirations. Next is Colin Powell. Colin Powell came out and also spoke against the president, saying he couldn't support him or vote for him. Now, keep in mind, this is the Colin Powell who lied about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. This is a man who has blood on his hands. He lied to the UN. He lied to the world. He got a coalition of troops to go into Iraq in 2003 and overthrow Saddam Hussein. I'm not saying Saddam Hussein's a good guy, but when you use corrupt means to achieve a certain end, it's not justified. 500,000 Iraqis died because of Colin Powell's lies. How many American soldiers faced the carnage of war and lost their lives? How many American families have been affected over the last 20 years because of Colin Powell's lies? Then you've got Mattis, who doesn't want to leave the Middle East, who wants to stay there. He and McMaster allowed ISIS to happen and grow on their watch and were unable to prevent Barack Obama from letting it happen. They're the generals. I'm blaming Barack Obama, but those guys got blood on their hands. Now, Mattis knew the threat of ISIS, and Mattis was willing to come back for Donald Trump and help eliminate ISIS because Mattis knew how to do that, and he did. And once ISIS was destroyed, Mattis, I think, cleaned up his guilt, honestly. He'd been fired by Barack Obama. He got fired again by Donald Trump. And it was over this simple fact. Donald Trump said, I want to pull out of the Middle East and specifically Syria. And everybody threw a fit, including Jim Mattis. And Trump said, you got to go. The American people elected me to pull out of the Middle East. So when Jim Mattis criticizes the president, don't forget that. When Colin Powell criticizes the president, don't forget he lied to you. He sent our boys to die over a lie. Then McMaster. Oh, McMaster. Hear this. This is Laura Logan. Now, Laura Logan is an incredible reporter. I gain more and more respect for her constantly. She is the investigative journalist version of Tucker Carlson is on the opinion side. Tucker Carlson will throw to millions of people every night some of the most straight talk you can get. Well, here's Laura Logan, the cop. I know tonight some of the videos have been a little grainy for you to hear. The audio's been a little grainy. Here's another one of her. This is another report that I can't find anywhere. A lot of times these things play once and then they're basically sucked off the internet and then you kind of end up with some bad audio. Here's another one too. I think this one's been sucked off the internet, but listen to what she says. This was live on Fox News when she gave it.
Critical that was reported in the Washington Post on the 1st of May. There's this article, and here it is. I have it here. This is not something I often do, but this is so significant to me that I wanted to make sure I had it printed out. The headline is about technology that was once used to combat ISIS propaganda is being...
Okay, so I'll just have to jump in a couple times to explain because I know the audio is not great. So they're using technology that they use to fight ISIS. So basically like social media technology.
Employed by a Democratic Political Action Committee, a super PAC, basically to counteract Trump's messaging on the coronavirus.
Okay, so they're using the social media tools that the United States military developed to fight ISIS, okay, to fight the insurrection of ISIS. And they're being used by a Democratic Party super PAC to fight Donald Trump.
And his handling of the coronavirus. And this super PAC has enlisted the assistance of General Stanley McChrystal, who many...
McChrystal. There's that name. Remember the name, Stanley McChrystal. The guy who went into Afghanistan and couldn't get the job done. The guy who criticized the commander-in-chief and got fired. The guy whose name is all over the Afghanistan papers, showing that that over and over and over again, we were being told by military and U.S. intelligence services that we could never win in Afghanistan and we needed to pull out and change the way we were acting, and that ISIS was rising and Al-Qaeda was gaining a foothold and Taliban was being defeated. And McMaster and Mattis covered those reports up so they wouldn't make it to the top because they were political appointees with an agenda in the Middle East. Those guys, yes, those guys, remember the names. McMaster now sits on top of a super PAC that is going against Trump using the technology developed by the United States military to defeat ISIS.
Your viewers will recognize his name. And he has openly stated in this article, it's a whole piece about it, the Washington Post has no problem with this, that they're taking a weapon of war that was designed to counter ISIS and Al-Qaeda, in other words, U.S. enemies, and they're using it against the U.S., against American citizens in this country. And they say in their own words, it's to combat online efforts to promote President Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. So if you've got a Republican governor in Florida who's succeeding, that's not a message they want to hear. You want to know how they'll combat it? So I'll tell you what. They're going to use artificial intelligence and network analysis to map a discussion of the president's claims on social media, and then seek to intervene by identifying the most popular counter-narratives and boosting them through a network of more than 3.4 million social influencers across the country, and some of those people will be paid by them. So I think what people may not understand about this is you're taking a weapon of war that the United States developed to use against its foreign enemies, and a former U.S. general is using that technology and those tactics with a political action committee, and they're using it against, to counter Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic. That is deeply political. And it's also, you can speak to many people in the intelligence community who will tell you that it's also illegal, never mind unethical. And that's where I think that's where the heart of the media issue lies over the virus.
That is exactly what we're dealing with here. Okay, we're dealing with these weaponized institutions that are being turned on us by these people that have been working together for decades and decades inside of government, creating what can in no other way be described than as a cabal, right? Hillary Clinton, funded by George Soros since the early 1990s. George Soros funding Antifa, funding anti-democratic causes all over the world. George Soros asking Barack Obama to investigate Donald Trump and taking out General Flynn because General Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. Illegal prosecution of General Flynn. Now you've got these generals who are neoliberals who are on the side of the party of Davos and this whatever cabal, they're obviously a part of it, coming out against Donald Trump, using military technology to fight Donald Trump online, to amplify what message seems to resonate with the enemies of Trump online and get that out everywhere. Guys, we're at war. We're in an information war. We are in a war for the hearts and minds of us peasants. Okay? Us peasants are subject to this stuff. We're going to be tracked the rest of our lives. We're going to be told to stand apart. We're going to have facial recognition when we go in and out of places. You're not going to have any kind of privacy. Okay, they're going to take more and more. You know what the Nazis used to do? They weren't socialist per se, like communists, where they had communal property. No, you could still have private property, but they taxed you at 90%. I talked to a guy in Bremerton. I did a construction job for him, and his father was a miner in Germany. He's very old. The man I was talking to was in his 80s. And his father was a miner in pre-World War II Germany. Owned a mine and was very affluent and wealthy, and this mine had been in his family for multiple generations. And when Hitler came to power, they basically said, you got to run the mine, do everything you've ever done, and you have all the risk. You still got to pay all your bills and mortgages, but they only allowed him to take a small paycheck equal to his laborer's paycheck. Kept all the same responsibility, but put a gun to his head and said, you got to keep doing this. That was what he experienced, okay? We've got a side of our political party in this country that would like to tax us to death, would like to tax us to oblivion. We've even got a side of the party that is flat out talking about confiscation of property and redistribution of property. And guys, we're there. It's time for civil disobedience. It's time for you to take the mask off. If you can do nothing else, take the mask off. Don't walk down the hallway at Walmart in the direction the arrow's pointed. If enough decent people stand against the insanity that's presented before us, it's before our eyes. It's not out there. It's not somewhere else. You could probably go to whatever town you're in where there's a Black Lives Matter / Antifa protest and look at a store across the street and you'll see they're enforcing social distancing there, but not over there. And it's not even being enforced, it's self-enforced. And that's the worst part. We're all becoming useful idiots. The people who propagate and push this stuff, their days are numbered. Their days are numbered. It's not reality. It's not reality. Let's be real. Let's be real about this, okay? Don't worry about these generals going against. Well, I shouldn't say don't worry. You should worry. It's a big deal, these generals going against Trump. But fortunately, the generals that are going against Trump are out of power. Mark Esper speaking against him, I don't know what to think about that. I've read a couple different analysis. Obviously, the media is trying to make it like a wedge. But when you actually read the statements of Mark Esper compared with the statements of Donald Trump, you realize they're kind of on the same team. They're saying the same thing. Donald Trump has not deployed the federal troops. In fact, he's sending them home. So just because he used the rhetoric and just because he threatened it doesn't necessarily mean he ever necessarily intended to use it. Maybe he was trying to create the media fitstorm, because what's happening now is Donald Trump is winning the narrative. See, the narrative is that Donald Trump is the outsider who wants to fix the broken government. See, Bernie Sanders was also that narrative, fix the broken government. The Clintons, the Bushes, the Obamas, the Bidens, they all represent the establishment, the existing structure, which is broken. Okay, all the people marching in the street that see the lack of justice, all the right-wingers that see the lack of justice and the corrupt FBI and the corrupt CDC, top to bottom, we all see it. Donald Trump can play that outsider who can fix it. He might not win every single photo op, but he's winning the narrative. I don't think Esper's out against him, but it's concerning. It definitely is concerning. I hope there's not a wedge there. The reason I didn't want to go too much in detail on it was because I wanted to see it play out. It all becomes moot if the troops go home. And as of this afternoon, the troops were supposedly going home from D.C. So the whole thing becomes moot. We didn't actually have to use the Insurrection Act. So hopefully we're past that. I'm getting worried about COVID round 2. That's why I've got to start speaking out to the people that are paying attention to us. We got to do what little we can to social distance. Really check yourself. Ask yourself, at what level are you willing to participate? How far are we going to let this go before we have to fight back? Guys, it'd be so much easier to fight back when all they're asking us to do is wear face masks. It's so easy to fight back right now. It's so easy. It's so hard to fight back when the cops start using open brutality on decent people. George Flynn was a criminal. He was a criminal. He's got a criminal history. He's got a criminal record. He's been to jail multiple times. He was on drugs when he was arrested. Does not excuse the actions of those cops. Doesn't excuse it. But when those cops start taking those same actions on completely innocent people because they don't want to wear a mask or don't want to follow whatever thing that our government's asking us to do. That's when it becomes too hard. Let's not let ourselves get to the point that we can't turn this thing around. Civil disobedience starts with you. One person. Starts with me. Starts with all of us. Pick your battles, but make your stand.